There's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down, and shut down, the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
We are jumping right in. A happy Friday to you, everybody. I'm Rob. You know who you are. Welcome to Just a Game. We are an inclusive podcast. Everybody is welcome here. We're broadcasting live from Treaty 7 territory. As we kick it off, we welcome our first guest in, brought to you, of course, by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. Hey, this just came across my desk. They've got an inventory clearance sale starting at 40% off because after 67 unforgettable years in the heart of the city, they're closing a store. That's right. The Ski Cellar Snowboard's iconic 17th Avenue location will be closing its doors, but not without one more blowout sale. Get ready for the biggest savings of the season as we offer spectacular discounts on items store-wide. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your skiing journey, this is your chance to stock up on top quality gear, clothing, and accessories at unbeatable prices. The event runs in-store, the 3 locations, starting today all the way through Halloween on Tuesday, October 31st. All 3 Ski Cellar Snowboard locations. Check them out. McLeod Trail, Bowness, and the soon-to-be closed down, not because they want to, but they have to, 17th Avenue location, or check them out online at skicellarsnowboard.com. We kick it off with, and I feel terrible about this because he is one of my favorite people in all of hockey. He does a service that he never, ever gets enough credit for, which is he sacrifices himself to Canada almost on a daily basis. Whenever something happens in Columbus, it doesn't matter if it's the Team 1040 or 1260 or the Fan 95, whatever. He's the man they go to, formerly of the Columbus Dispatch, but now with The Athletic. And I do want to point out, wrote the premier article on the Mike Babcock situation in Columbus. I cannot say enough good things about him, and I will compliment him on his background because it looks terrific. Please welcome our good friend, Aaron Portzline. Portsy, it's good to talk to you, pal. How are you?
Well, Rob, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. I love Canada.
And we love you.
If I can't be there, the next best thing is talking with Canada. That's a real picture, by the way. That's do looking out my back door if you're
No, that's as a Star fan. Thank you.
Yeah. We've had a great year for leaves, so might as well use that backdrop while we can.
We don't have them anymore. We've had strong winds and they're gone. And the other thing that, people were tuning in to find out was my rant about we don't get red leaves either. We just get yellow. You get colors.
Yeah, I think you probably get a cold snap there really quickly. You don't ease into it, is my sense.
You know what? It's the cold snap's coming next week, which is kind of late for us, but it's the damn wind. We get these strong fall winds, and So, share the line. You had the best line. We were sitting there talking before we went on the air. The Blue Jacket, because you've been there like from day one, and it's never dull. And if you had to write a book about the Blue Jackets, what would the title be?
Well, that's the thing. You could write 10 books about the Blue Jackets because there's so many unbelievable stories that have happened through the years. I mean, the Babcock thing is just kind of the latest, but there have, it's just been one thing after another with the franchise. As I said to you, and it might be the title of a book. If you had to sum up their 23 years as quickly as possible, it would be rarely good, never boring.
Never.
They are never boring. I mean, I find people, they remember because they pay attention here. They love the hockey team here, but it's like Sergei Fedorov was here. My God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's all been sort of stuff like that where you're like, that's right. That's right. They've had Hitchcock. They've had Tortorella. They've had the legendary Dave King to start it all.
Yep.
They drafted a kid, Sergei Mosyakin, who never came here, stayed in Russia, and is the highest scoring player in the history of the KHL. What could he have been in the NHL if he had been a Blue Jacket? I mean, they've had great talent. They've had utter sadness, which we don't need to talk about now, just things that have been absolutely crushingly sad. It's crazy. And this year, again, with Babcock, 4 days before training camp, nobody would pick that time to do it. But, the other side is, thank God they did it, because if they hung on to that and allowed that to fester into the season, God knows how much damage it could have done. So
what happened around the pandemic? It just seemed to me like a lot of this stuff was finally lifting. That, to me, it all culminated with that 4-game sweep of Tampa Bay, which, nobody saw coming. Yeah. It really felt like, okay, they're over the hump. What happened between then and now?
Well, the player departures were slow but significant at first, and then continued. So even as they won that series with Tampa Bay, they knew that Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky were not going to re-sign in Columbus. So your best goalie, your best player, like, ow, that's a hit. Right. They still made the playoffs the next year. They took Toronto out in the qualifying round.
In the bubble, right?
Yeah, as I'm sure Western Canada enjoyed.
Yeah, every minute of it.
Yes. And then they lost to Tampa in what was technically the first round. But then, from there, Pierre-Luc Dubois left. So there's your top center. So now in the span of a year plus, you've lost your Vezina winning goalie, your Hart Trophy candidate forward, and your number one center. Not many teams can survive that.
Right.
The next year it was, okay, Seth Jones, what would you like to do here? You've been in Nashville, you've been in Columbus. What are you thinking? Well, I think I'd like to go to an original 6 big city. I'd like to play in a big market. Okay, well then we'll move you. So Seth Jones moves. Now it's a good trade. They got Cole Sillinger and a first-round draft pick. Cole Sillinger became the first-round draft pick, became Cole Sillinger. But they, how do you replace there's a top defenseman in the game at that point, top 5 or 10, I think most would agree. So you just don't overcome that. And then Tortorella really wasn't game for a rebuild, which is a touch ironic because he's in one now in Philly. Foligno leaves, Atkinson leaves. I mean, all these guys that they were traded, I should say. Atkinson was traded. Mm-hmm. Foligno got a deal with Boston that Columbus could not or would not match. So all of the guys that sort of paved the way in that Toronto series within about 2+ years were gone. And so Columbus started to commit to a rebuild. And then, as you all know, Johnny Gaudreau said, hi, what would you think about me coming there? Which totally blindsided them. And then the rebuild kind of became okay, we're here now, which is not ideal.
Yeah.
So they've got this roster now where they've got Laine and Werenski and Gaudreau and some really established good NHL players. And then you've got a bunch of guys that are just still figuring it out. I mean, so many guys. And it's just not there a lot of nights because, of course, it's not. They don't know what they're doing yet. But the other thing that's weird right now is their head coach, Pascal Vincent, who took over for Babcock. He's preaching the long game. We're going to practice hard. We're not going to worry about what game is next on the schedule. Guys are going to get to this level. We're going to bring them up to this level. It's going to take us time to get there. I'm not sure when we're going to get there, but that's what we're going to do. And the GM, if you ask him, says, no, we think we can make the playoffs. Just get in. And it's like two completely different, narratives coming from the coach and the GM. So from the owner, I'm not sure really where that goes. I think the coach has got a little more leash right now than the GM does, given the way things have gone. But so there it is. Rarely good, never boring.
So I think I think I'm the one that can ask this question because I'm calling from Calgary, and the beneficiary of a guy wanting out of Calgary is in the starting lineup for Columbus tonight. But why the departures? What I mean, we can trace it back to here. The building's terrible. You know, the coach rubbed some people the wrong way. It didn't feel. I don't want to be in this fishbowl, that sort of thing. But why? What was wrong with Panarin and Bobrovsky's situation? What was wrong that allowed these, or not allowed, but these guys excused themselves and left?
Yeah. So, it's interesting, and I think Columbus probably should feel a little better about this. It's not one thing. It's not, I can't stand the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it's really, people always think it's Tortorella, or it was Tortorella. It wasn't Tortorella in any of the cases. It was different in every case. I wrote a story several years ago about Artemi Panarin and how he grew up and how he had basically nothing when he was a kid. And now he's at a point where he wants things. He wants the whole thing. He wants to live in New York City and play in Madison Square Garden. That was his dream.
Yeah.
And Columbus is cannot compete on that ground. No. Can't. Sergei Bobrovsky wanted to be the highest paid goalie in the NHL, wanted a monster deal. Columbus did not want to commit that type of term and that type of money to Bobrovsky. He played very well for Florida at times last year, but it has been a choppy existence there, and there's still a lot of term left on that deal. So see where that goes. Atkinson was traded, was absolutely crushed to be traded, loves it here, still lives here. Foligno still lives here, plans to retire here. Pierre-Luc Dubois is still a bit of a mystery. My colleague Marat in Winnipeg wrote a really interesting piece this week where for the first time, Dubois really talked about his departures from both Columbus and Winnipeg. Now, in a sense, he's had time to get his stories together. So I'll believe it. I'll believe what he says. I still think there's something else there that nobody knows about,
right,
with Pierre, but something snapped where it became, I have to get out of here now.
Yeah.
And you saw that last shift in Columbus, just completely unacceptable.
Yep.
He played his way out of town. It had to be done immediately. So they've all been a little different. Seth Jones, like I said, wanted to go to a huge market, wanted the lifestyle and the marketing attachments that come with playing in a big market. He's gotten his wish. He may be the captain in Chicago before it's all done. So it's been a bunch of different reasons, not one, blemish on this organization that causes people to depart. The city takes a ton of hits from people, mostly from people who haven't been here.
Correct.
It is not Manhattan. It does not have an ocean. We do not have, we do have mountains just about an hour southeast of Columbus. The Appalachians pick up, but it's not Vancouver. But it has a fantastic restaurant scene. If you are a young person, there is a university up the street with about 60,000 undergrads. There's always a good time to be found on campus. There's stuff to do here. It's a different city than most people believe. It's bigger than Cleveland and Cincinnati combined by 250,000 people. Like, it is a monstrosity in the middle of the state. But it just doesn't have the reputation of those other two cities. Long earned. Cleveland and Cincinnati are regarded as the two biggest cities in Columbus, and they're not. But it's been a bunch of different things that have caused people to depart.
To that end, shout out to Top Hat, arguably the best on the tour for a good lunch before a game.
Tip Top,
Tip Top. Sorry, Tip Top. So that shows you how long since I've been there. 6 months ago, 5 months ago, Mike Babcock gets installed.
Mm-hmm.
What was the story around the Jackets at that point with Mike there? Where were they going? What was he addressing? What was the feel, the vibe, as it were,
Yeah.
Aaron?
So they just had 2 years with Brad Larson, who was not John Tortorella, and a lot of stuff slid. Performance slid. I think leadership slid. I think there was a lot of things that they saw that they just didn't like. One thing that stood out to me was a comment early in the season by Eric Goodbranson. I think it might have been before Calgary was in town, actually, fairly innocuous, saying, we just haven't practiced well the last couple of days. We've got to get back to that. And someone took that on the coaching staff so personally that Goodbranson was made to apologize the next day, as though he was questioning the coaching staff. I don't think anybody took it that way. I don't think anybody even thought about that until he was made to apologize, making something which was incredibly forgettable now utterly unavoidable. So, they felt like they needed a stern, firm hand, a no-nonsense, no BS coach. They'd heard all the horror stories about John Tortorella before he got here. Players had, coaches had, all of them. And he departed here at some point in his tenure in Columbus, having a beef with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, a absolutely, how to say it? They hold him in great standing.
Yeah.
He is, the players loved him once they became used to the fact that everyone was getting it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And if everyone gets it the same way, it's not personal. Sometimes you got to go around the horn with that a couple of times before you pick up on it. But I mean, the players in 2020 made Torts for Presidents shirts, which would not have been a bad candidate given our choices here.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, a team doesn't do that if there's not some sort of relationship there.
Right.
So a lot of that stuff was just seen as the YouTube clips. And Rob, you've seen Torts and Larry Brooks interact on a normal day. It's fine.
I was in the middle of one.
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Those are the highlights, if you will, or the lowlights. We've all had them. I've had moments with Torts too. But they felt like so. And then you go back even further. They had a lot of success with Ken Hitchcock, who, when he was hired, you hear Doug McClain before he was hired say, "Do you think I'd hire that guy? You think I would turn my roster over to that guy?" And then a week later, here's Ken Hitchcock, and you go, "Oh, Doug's not in charge here anymore." And Hitch took him to the playoffs for the first time. They really grew up under Hitch. So much success, really, for a franchise that had never tasted it. So that's their history. Hitchcock worked here. Tortorella worked here. And Brad Larson did not work here for 2 years. So they went back to this firm hand. I think it's also Jarmo Kekalainen's tendency, too. The answer is work harder. Work harder. You're not working hard enough. So he wanted a coach to that end, and he got him. And it did not sit well with a lot of people inside Columbus, outside of Columbus. An assistant coach in Columbus basically left weeks later without a job lined up. He didn't take it well. I think the players didn't want to say anything, but they were like, what are we doing here? And then as they met with him, I think some players started to come around. He put on a good show.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as you know, it blew up from there when some of those meetings went way off the rails in a highly inappropriate way.
Any sense, Aaron? I mean, hindsight's obviously the great equalizer in 2020, but I'm blown away that he didn't make it to the games. I am. Yeah. I know what happened. I get all that. But was there any sense of being around the team? I know it wasn't quite into the training camp mode where you're around them a lot. But any sense of any red flags?
No, not until, the Paul Bissonnette comments on Spit and Chicklets, which I saw them on Twitter early one morning and copied them to the Blue Jackets and said, what is this about? Like, this is way out of left field. And we're looking into it. And then later that day, they came out with their statement. There's so much about this that's just bizarre. Yeah. The one thing that I keep hearing from people is, the young players have to toughen up. And I really don't think I get it. I know where you're coming from. It is a different generation in a lot of ways. That is not applicable in this story. No. The way that he handled himself with young players was different than how he handled himself with veteran players.
Right.
Bullies know who they can bully.
Yep.
And that is many steps too far. The other thing is that he didn't even realize he was doing something wrong as a defense. That almost makes it worse, because that tells you that there has been nothing learned from the stuff that he ran aground with in Toronto, before that in Detroit. He hasn't learned. It has been too easy for him to put it on a soft generation. Let some time pass. We'll get back into the game. That this is how you do things. And they needed to take care of that when they did, or it could have been really, really ugly well into the season.
I don't wish to litigate it. You wrote the best piece on it, and I encourage people to go get, if they don't have an athletic subscription, get it for that piece alone. I thought it was brilliant, and I told you that. But two pieces that come out of it that I would love your perspective on. Yeah. One has to do with Paul Bissonnette. I'm fascinated by his role in this and what I perceive his role to be. And I'd like, because you're closer to it, am I nuts? Am I insane? But has he become in many ways this generation's Don Cherry, or has he become in many ways an advocate or a mouthpiece to get stuff done from the players who have traditionally never had that, right? In the sense that, they do what they're told, but now they have somebody who has a platform and the largest in the sport, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Does he become kind of a kingmaker in all of this?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that is his end game here. And honestly, I think when and I don't know Paul other than to have said hello a few times, and we've always been fine. So none of this is a criticism of him. But I think when he put that out there, it was more just conversational with him and his guys. Like, I don't think they had any sense that this was going to go kaboom. But it sheds some light on some things. Players feel comfortable talking to former players, and I don't think a Blue Jacket called Paul Bissonnette up and said, "Get a load of this." I think players talk, and the juicy stuff moves along, to other players, and I think that's what happened here. But it's troubling when So the Blue Jackets' initial play on this was to say, everything's fine. It's not a big deal. This is what happened. Everything's good. And then there was a bit of a pushback there from like, oh, no, not just from the Blue Jackets room, but from former players. I think maybe this opens up new avenues for Paul Bissonnette that he hasn't considered, but I don't get the sense that he wants to be that guy. I think he knows a lot of stuff, obviously, that's going on in the league, and he's very well informed. I more see him as, for a U.S. reference, kind of the Charles Barkley. I think he's going for that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The stuff that he says and gets away with, if somebody else said it, they just might not get away with it.
But he kept it going, didn't he? Because he doubled down. Like when that never happened. He doubled down on it.
To his credit. And I have to say, we were very careful in the early going to say, hey, listen, none of this report here. This is the Blue Jackets. Some players initially saying this is what is up. But we're not saying that Paul Bissonnette was incorrect in what he passed along. Right. And he is standing by it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we made that abundantly clear, because it wasn't like Biz is wrong, the Blue Jackets say this. It was, here's what both sides are saying, because it was such a strange story. He doesn't, he's not unlike a Pat McAfee in the States either, where it's like he does not view himself as a journalist either.
Right.
And that gives him some, let's be honest, some freedom to just throw some stuff out there. Let's talk about it. Sure. Whereas, if I, some of the stuff that you can talk about in Spit and Chicklets, you wouldn't be able to just throw out there on The Athletic. People would say, whoa, where is this coming from? Right. Do you have a second source?
Yeah.
Yada, yada. And that's not saying he did anything wrong. It's just a different format and a different approach to things. But I won't be surprised if he has more stories like this, because if you're a Blue Jackets player, if you're an NHL player, you see now the power in getting your word out. Whereas I think for so many years, players tended to just swallow stuff, and they do trust former players as much of a relationship as you try to build with them as possible. I think they're always going to lean towards the guys who have the same experiences that they've had.
Do you have, just as an aside on this, that you brought me here now, do you have an observation about kind of the fall that we've had in hockey? And I don't anticipate you paid very close attention to the Western Hockey League, but Kevin Constantine, he came in second chance. A lot has been made about Bill Peters in Lethbridge now. So far, so good. But what's your observation about second chances in hockey and coaches this fall? Because it really seems to be somewhat of a story, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things that's been asked a million times since this all came to pass with Babcock is he's done, right? And I go, well, I think, but like all it takes is one, right?
Right.
I mean, it just takes one. Is Bill Peters the only guy that Lethbridge could turn to? Like, that was it? We got to go here, even though the baggage is there. It's that clear a choice. That's hard for me to believe. But a lot of the GMs and owners, they go to the people they know.
Mm-hmm.
And, Jarmo Kekalainen has known Mike Babcock forever. John Davidson has known him forever. I think it's pretty clear. The phrase due diligence has been completely bastardized.
Yep.
It was not diligent. It was due, but it wasn't diligent. They basically talked to people that like Mike Babcock. I mean, I don't, no offense to Mike Commodore, I still stay in touch with him. I still like him. I would not go to him.
No,
it's just too.
Yeah, too extreme.
We know where you stand.
Yeah.
But I would have talked to agents or people related to players who have had issues with them in the past.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, when they hired him, it was, the Marner thing wasn't really passed along accurately. The Franzen thing, you got to consider the player there first. Yes, Chelios spouted out against Babcock, but he also got benched by Babcock, so he was mad at Babcock for this.
Right.
The Modano thing, the scratch happened way before the end of the season. He could never have known that it was 1,500 games or whatever the number was. Like, there were reasons for all of it.
Yep.
But again, I come back to this. The Marner stuff is not old school, new school. It's stupid.
It's bullying.
It's bullying, and it's completely anti-team building.
Yes.
Like, that is just,
it's a power play.
Right? God, it's incredible that you would do that. And it's not a modern player problem. It's just an idiotic thing to do.
Two names that you brought up. This was the second point out of Babcock. And they're both different for me. So I'll start with Jarmo. Why is Kekalainen still in charge?
So Jarmo is the first GM here to have a buffer between him and the owner.
Okay.
And that buffer is about as strong as it gets in hockey certainly in Columbus, John Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
John Davidson has the presence and the voice of Moses. If he says this, it is true. And that's where ownership is with John Davidson.
Okay.
As long as John Davidson believes in Jarmo Kekalainen, he's going to be the GM here. Now, they both took some hits with the Babcock thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is an ownership. It's funny because, nobody wants a Jerry Jones owner. But the owner here is kind of the complete opposite of that, where it's like, here's the money, here's the building. Let me know if you need anything. Here are the guys that are in charge of hockey. And that, to me, is almost ideal.
Yeah. Stay
out of it.
Yeah.
Let the hockey people make hockey decisions. When ownership steps in here and involves themselves, they take it as a very serious thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to do this. They don't like to see their names in print. Only when it comes to Worthington's Industries stock price going up, sure, they'll like to see their name.
Sure.
They love the Blue Jackets. They are committed as a family, not suggesting otherwise, but they let the hockey people do the hockey stuff. And that statement issued on Media Day, ironically, was a shot across the bow. We're watching.
Mm-hmm.
And you've told us that this team is going to be competitive this year. So here you go. You're still in charge. We're not making a move with you. But everything you have promised us is still possible with Pascal Vincent. Go forth into the season, which many take to mean that John Davidson and or Jarmo Kekalainen are on watch. And I think that's reasonable. It's been 10 years. He's the second or third longest tenured GM,
Mm-hmm.
second, I believe. Replaced Scott Howson. That's how long ago that was. The first European-born GM in the NHL. And yeah, it's been an interesting run in Columbus.
I feel bad because it's like, Jarmo, why is he there? How dare he? And then when it comes to John Davidson, it's, oh, John, why do you have to be please don't be involved in this, right? Like,
right.
Who says a cross word about John Davidson, right?
Oh, my God. Who are you? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward to the team. I know it's just a couple games in, but Pascal Vincent is the coach. Some interesting pieces on this team right now. Tell me about Patrick Laine and this experiment at center. Why and is it going well? Is it continuing? What's the thought process there?
Yeah, well, the thought process from the idea came from Tage Thompson.
Ah, okay.
He's big. He was a winger. Now he's a center. Whoa. That was the genesis with Laine. It started at the end of last season when the Blue Jackets were in Connor Bedard mode.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody kind of thought it was just, something to entertain us as we play out the string here. But then, and it should be noted that if Mike Babcock were the coach, Patrick Laine was a winger this year. Pascal Vincent takes over. Laine starts training camp on the wing. They have a meeting in which Laine makes it clear to him that, no, I'm really I'm serious about playing center. And the Blue Jackets have some question marks at center, no other way to say it, but they have more options now than they've ever had. So they really didn't need Laine to play center as they've needed other centers in previous years. But he has known Pascal Vincent all the way back to his Winnipeg Jets days. It's a good relationship. And Pascal Vincent said, okay, here's what I need from you. You got to give me this in practice. You got to give me this in games. As long as I see that, we'll try it. So they tried it in the preseason. He led him in scoring in the preseason. It looked pretty good. Preseason is not a great judge sometimes. We seem to learn that every year. It's been a choppy start, not just for Patrick Laine, for the whole team. You could have almost seen that this was going to be a choppy start with a new coach 4 days before camp, a new system, 2 new defensemen who are top 4 guys, Provorov and Severson. So many. Laine moving to center is a fairly radical change. Texier comes back from Europe. Fantilli comes in as an 18-year-old. So there's new faces everywhere. Roslovic moves to the wing. Sillinger moves to the wing. So you've got new people in. You've got old faces in new places. You hire an assistant coach a week into training camp, Mark Recchi, to replace Vincent. So it's just been there's so many moving parts right now that you could almost tell that the start of this season, and it may just be because the young guys aren't there yet, but you could just see that the early part of the season was going to be really choppy. Just disjointed play, ups and downs with, scratches and, movement between the lines and the pairs. And that's all come to pass. I have no idea what to expect tonight. Line A just sort of self-immolated 3 times yesterday talking to the media. I've been awful. I can't shoot. I can't hit the net to save my life. I can't win a face-off. So badly that Pascal Vincent said, "Whoa, I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah,
we got to build him back up here." So I'm not sure how long they keep Line A in the middle. I can see it either way. To me, this is a strange time to be figuring this kind of stuff out. Like, these games should still matter until they don't. But he's not the only guy that has struggled. That would be way off the mark.
Sure. You mentioned Connor Bedard. Everybody was, eyes all on the generational player, and he's in Chicago. But Adam Fantilli doesn't strike me as, not that bad of a consolation prize.
Absolutely.
How's he looked? How's he fitting in?
Well, he's looked incredible for a kid that turned 19 on opening night. I mean, he's one of those guys. Rob, you and I have talked about this. These guys that just know how to handle every situation, even when it's the first time they've been in it. They know how to act around veteran players. They know, they don't have to screw up multiple times before they figure it out. And I marvel at those guys. He's one of those guys. He's got incredible poise and presence. He says all the right things to us, but he's not completely shielded and off limits. He's fairly conversational. I think he even said it before the draft. Nobody believed him. So he went back and played the video. He told a Michigan staffer that he wanted to come to Columbus. He thought Columbus would be the best spot for him. Words rarely heard from top 18-year-olds. So that was nice to hear. His parents are absolutely over the moon. They drive down. They've been down for a couple games already. I'm not sure if they're in tonight or not. They're used to driving to Ann Arbor. There's, of course, a well-worn path from Ann Arbor to Columbus, Ohio through the years.
Yes.
So an easy trip there. It seems to be really off to a good start. He hasn't scored. It's coming. It may come against the Flames tonight. But he is a big kid. Not huge, but he's a solid size for a 19-year-old. Moves extremely well. Great shot. He's going to be a very good player for a long time.
Speaking of the Flames tonight, we will see Zach Werenski back into the lineup. Tell me about him. When he landed and came into the league, it's like, wow, this kid is going to be really special.
Yeah.
And I think he's a very good defenseman. I don't want to say that, but what's the arc on him? What's the career been to this point?
But to me, he's a number one. He is a 10 to 12 goal guy, 40, 50 point guy, if it works. So much of that for defensemen is the power play. And the power play here in Columbus has been, I think it's a Class D felony that the power play that they've put out the last 4 or 5 years is brutal. He is a leader in the room. This is sort of a inside baseball story, but Rob, you'll like this. This is how Zach Werenski's wired. I think he's 21. He is a restricted free agent. And the season's over. He's back in Michigan. And before he leaves, we say, "Hey, how worried are you about the contract?" And he says, "You know what? No offense. I don't really want to even talk about the contract because they just don't want to air it out publicly. I'm convinced it's going to get done. I'm not worried about it, but I don't want to create something that's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Full respect.
Yep.
He goes back home, starts his off-season training, and a national reporter is there at the rink in Plymouth and pulls him aside and asks him a question. And he talks about, I think it'll get done, blah, 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 blah. And he realizes he's talking to a reporter about the same thing he just told the people back home. That kid goes to his car, calls the Blue Jackets PRs and says, can you call the local people and tell them I'll talk about the contract? Because I feel bad having talked to a national guy when I should have. And it's like, wow. Like, you don't see that much anymore. I think people used to think that way back in the day. It's been years since that sort of approach. He is a dazzling offensive player. I don't know if he is viewed as an all-around defensive player enough to be a Norris Trophy guy. If he puts it together in a season, sometimes you have to be the best defenseman for 3 or 4 years before that comes around anyways.
Yep.
But I think most people view him as an all-star type defenseman, an upper echelon for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about Johnny Gaudreau. It's a year after. It remains somewhat of a sore spot here.
Sure.
For a myriad of reasons, but I think the biggest is that, this organization has never had the luxury of picking first, never had generational players like McDavid and so on. And, he was that, right? Fourth round pick. What's transition been like to Columbus, and what do you see covering him that maybe you didn't see just seeing him a couple times a year?
Yeah, I think he's happy here. And I'll say this too. I'm not sure it makes anybody feel better in Calgary, but if anybody knows what you're feeling regarding Gaudreau, it's Columbus.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, and other markets have this too.
Yeah.
It's hard to not take it personally.
Yeah.
And other people take great glee in you taking it personally or telling you should anyways. Johnny's been good. I don't know. I knew that he was a dazzling player. He has been that. I think, he doesn't have a Lindholm here. They don't have the great power play here, so it hasn't really exploded offensively for him, but he was solid last year. Mm-hmm. I think he's in a situation in Columbus where he's had to do a lot of the work himself to create. Whereas, he had options around him in Calgary. That line was incredible.
Yep.
The other dirty little secret that I'm writing for Sunday is that he and Laine, they don't thrive together. Mm-hmm. You would think Johnny Playmaker, Patrick Big Shot would work. But it's the science of lines that they just don't work sometimes.
Yep.
And certainly not signing off on that never working, because they've got a long way to go here together, and it could come around. What if you moved Laine to the wing and put somebody in between them? Maybe it awakens, but it just hasn't. They have not elevated each other. So it's almost like they're two independent contractors. Believe it or not, they're on separate power play units tonight. Which one's the one and which one's the two? There is no one and there is no two. Oh, okay. Which one goes out first? Well, it depends on who was out last. But that's something we haven't seen before. But both of them are most comfortable on the left dot. That's where Laine's one-timer is. That's where Gaudreau likes to make his plays. So together they have not elevated each other. Individually, they've been streaky and good at times. Laine has not yet had that season where he's put it all together in Columbus, mostly because of injuries. But he's been at times a streaky player, but hasn't been, that 40-goal guy that Winnipeg saw early.
I know Boone Jenner's the captain of this team, but just curious of now in his second year, where does Gaudreau fit in the hierarchy of the dressing room? Even in the community, where's his role?
Well, I think he's respected in the room. I don't think he cares to carry a heavy load of leadership. though. I don't get that sense. I think he's an excellent player. He takes care of himself. I think he's available for other players, but I don't get the sense he's a Corrali or a Werenski or a Jenner that take other guys under their wings necessarily.
No.
He is one of the more popular players for sure, Johnny Hockey. And, he's out and about in the community. He's got a young family, so it's not, it always changes when that occurs. But he's held in very high regard by the fan base for sure.
Last one for you, goaltending. I know that Spencer Martin was claimed on waivers and, said goodbye to Korpisalo, I believe, last year. It's tragedy, not that long ago. But where is this organization when it comes to puck stoppers?
Well, they're committed to Elvis Merzlikins, one of the characters of the game. But Elvis had an awful season last year in all ways. 876 save percentage, 876. Injured, out of the lineup 4 or 5 times. And so with him just getting started on a long-term contract, the Blue Jackets took the painful step of trading the best goalie in the organization, Korpisalo, who's a hell of a goalie, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did what they've needed to do around Elvis. They changed his goaltending coach, which was an abrupt change for him because he was very close to Manny Legacy, the previous coach. Nick Backstrom, the former Wild goalie, is wired completely different than Manny Legacy. He's a very serious, studious type. I think Elvis needs that. They brought in 2 new defensemen. They've bolstered the center ice position. So they've tried to create a different game in front of Elvis, but he's got to do a lot of the heavy lifting himself. Having said that, he's been pretty good in the early going. He left his second game, the win over the Rangers, after 2 periods with illness, missed the next game. He's back tonight. He's played so far so good in this regular season. But there's no question, he is a huge question mark for this team. Since he got here, he played very well when he first got here. And his numbers, just look at Hockey DB, his numbers, the save percentage has gone steadily down since then. As you hinted at, there's so much more here than just hockey. Him losing his close friend, Matisse Kivlenieks, and witnessing it. I'm not sure how you get over that, if you get over that. And this is really unsettling, but he mentioned the following year that the cannon that goes off in Nationwide Arena was a stress point for him after the Kivlenieks tragedy. My God.
Yeah.
It's that front of mind.
Right.
So, yeah, he's there's an enormous amount of sympathy for Elvis Merzlikins here. He is a likable guy. He is a character of the game. He wants to be the guy, but he's 29 years old too. This is not a young man anymore.
Wow.
This is a very important year for Elvis.
Yeah. Listen, you know how much I hold you in esteem, and you've always been a favorite of mine. And the nice thing about Aaron Portzline is never the story. He tells great stories, but he's never the story. Can I just ask how you're doing? I know you shared publicly a disclosure here at the beginning of the month. And I think just by having the conversation, we might be able to do some good up here.
Yeah.
But you currently have stage 5 kidney failure. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I did dialysis this morning.
Okay.
I do it 3 days a week, 4 hours. I do it at, this is how you know your hockey lifer. I do it at 5 a.m. so that I'm out of the chair at 9 so I can be at the rink.
Wow. That's dedication.
Now I bailed on the rink today, I'll admit.
Yeah.
And I have some days because it's not a pleasant experience. But honestly, the thing you're kind enough to show on your screen here today, of course it is about me, but the push here was to get people to become donors.
Right.
It's a source of much frustration in that world where there aren't too many things we can agree on these days, but most people seem to think they would be willing to give their organs in the event of their death if it meant a better life or life itself for several other people. And yet many people who feel that way have not indicated in any legal way that that's what they wish to do. So the push is on to get people to I apologize, I don't have a Canadian address there. I'm sure you could find it.
Yeah.
For people to sign up. I've heard in some countries you are born a donor and you have to opt out of it. What a wonderful world that would be. But it's not like that in the States. I'm waiting on several people who incredibly have been kind enough to volunteer to donate a kidney to me. But there are 90,000 people who need a kidney. There's over 100,000 people who are waiting on an organ transplant. So it's something we can do. It's not a pleasant conversation. It's kind of like doing your will. I'll grant you, it's not always a pleasant thing to think about, but it's a fairly painless step, and you don't need an attorney. So it's better than doing your will. You can do it fairly quickly, and you can make a really big difference. I think of Chris Snow, my friend, certainly a friend of yours, and touched many people in Calgary and beyond. So sad to see how that came to pass. And yet, what a beautiful thing that on the other side of that, several people could benefit from the beauty that was Chris Snow. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at promoting. And thank you for the well wishes. The hockey world's been incredible with that. We'll get there. I know that we'll get there, but it's something we can all do.
Love you, brother. I miss running into you at the rink.
Thank you.
And you are the best. So we'll stay in touch. But we do want to encourage everybody to take that opportunity to become a donor and save a life. And I'm pulling for you. And again, find you at the Athletic. Be well. Enjoy the game tonight. I know we'll talk soon. I know you'll be on some station in Canada here in the next hour anyway.
Yeah. Rob, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. See you.
Peace.
There you go. The great Aaron Portzline from the Athletic. If you are so inclined, we can always use more donors, and he is using his situation to draw attention to the need for donors. I think of Logan Boulay and the Boulay effect. This is a guy I love. This is a guy I really, really love. Of course, brought to you by Ski Sellers Snowboard, skisellersnowboard.com. Clearance sale right now, 40% off. It starts at 40% off. Now, this is because the 17th Avenue location will be closing its doors. So normally we say, well, there's 4 when it's up and running. There will only be 3. But right now, after 67 unforgettable years in the heart of the city, Ski Sellers Snowboard's iconic 17th Avenue location will be closing its doors, but not without a blowout sale. So get ready. It's underway today. It runs all the way to October 31st. Biggest savings of the season, spectacular discounts on all items store-wide. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your skiing journey, this is your chance to stock up on top quality gear, clothing, and accessories at unbeatable prices. Just incredible. Oh, by the way, all skis, boots, bindings, and snowboards have been moved to the McLeod Trail and Bowness locations. So all 3 places, McLeod, Bowness, will continue to provide you the great quality service and that you've come to expect from Ski Sellers Snowboard. But we are saying goodbye after 67 years to the location on 17th Avenue. So between now and Tuesday, October 31st, take advantage of the sale. Ski Sellers Snowboard, skisellersnowboard.com. Thanks, Darren Portzline, for joining us. Always love catching up with Portsy. He's just, what you see is what you get. That's the guy. There's no airs. You pull into Columbus and he doesn't go sit somewhere else. He comes and sits with you. He comes to Calgary. He doesn't go sit somewhere else. He comes sits with you. And he will be, like, literally, he's probably doing all the Calgary shows today. And through the whole Babcock thing, I mean, I think at one point Jack was putting up his schedule. He was posting his schedule. He's doing 9-10 radio television hits a day, just talking about it because he's the authority in Columbus. So I remember I did a little project when I was with the Flames. We were starting off podcasts and stuff like that. And Torrey Peterson and I used to do a podcast. But I sat down and I talked to Aaron about the history of hockey in Ohio. At that time, starting to see some players drafted, starting to see, lots of talent coming out of that area. And it was great to go and learn about, the people who built hockey in Ohio and who built hockey in Columbus. And he was just incredible in sharing those stories. So got lots of time and lots of appreciation for Aaron Portzline. Just a great guy. All right. Calgary in Columbus tonight, coming off a 5-4 win a 4-3 win in Buffalo last night. Should have been a 5-3 win. I mean, that freaking no goal. Come on. Mackenzie Wiegers. I was saying to Jack, I had the luxury and the opportunity to sit in the war room 10 years ago and watch them with all the screens and all the technology and everything. And so here you go. I mean, Mackenzie Weegar just fires it up the middle. Whoop, there it is. Come on. Like we all know. And you can see the official, like, come on. I mean, where's common sense in all of this? I know. If you watch the replay, the official waits and calls it a no goal. So again, this is the important part here. Watch the official, watch the referee. Now he calls it no goal. Now it's incumbent upon the video evidence to absolutely refute the fact that that was a goal or not a goal. So I don't know. To me, I mean, the Flames won, so I feel like you can complain about this. I think if they lose, it just looks like poor sportsmanship. I fall down on the side of human error. I've always fallen down on the side of human error. I don't like video replay. I don't like it in sports. I don't think we should have it. I listen, I have been there. I was there in 2004. I was right behind in the Zamboni entrance. If the Flames had won, I would have been out on the ice doing interviews for 960. So I was, stationed right behind Habby Boulin. And I saw Darren Pang, who's working with ABC TV. He was sitting at a table with a monitor underneath the stands. And he said that puck was in. I've lived through all of that. Even then, that does not convince me that we need video replay. The NHL put out a statement that night and said, "Oh, we reviewed it and it was not a goal." They didn't. That was it. That was them covering their asses, is what that was. But I watched that last night and I'm like, "Come on, guys, come on." Now, again, if you call that a goal on the ice, then you got to have irrefutable evidence that it wasn't in. There was no irrefutable evidence that wasn't in. But if you call that no goal, well, do we really? Yeah, you do. You do. But that's an old man yelling at the clouds, as the song says. So there we are. Vladar shaky in the first period. He admitted to that. Kelly Rudy called it on the broadcast, on the television broadcast. I think everybody saw it. That power play goal, he fell down in an awkward position. He just wasn't. He was on his heels. He wasn't on his toes. I thought he was fine the rest of the way. And it's his first game, and he hadn't played since the preseason. There's a million excuses. They were able to shake that on off and overcome that. I thought Huberdeau was really noticeable last night. Got the early goal. Was out there late, blocking shots and stuff like that. But Huberdeau noticeable against Buffalo versus Huberdeau noticeable against Pittsburgh. There's a difference there. And I hope, the points, he's got a point a game and his line is there. I need more of that and need it in bigger games. But, they win on the backs. I thought they won on the back of their fourth line and all their lines really, because they all contributed. Boy, Buffalo is a big team. They got some big players, but boy, they don't play big, do they? Like they didn't muscle the Flames. And Calgary, I'd like to see Calgary. I keep using the word playing with a little more snot, a little harder to play, a little greasier to play. Didn't see that. But I didn't think Buffalo used their size. Again, big players. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's, one of the observations. Owen Power played 26 minutes. Rasmus Dahlin played 23-17. These guys are there for almost the next decade. That is a luxury of riches. That is as good a couple of young defensemen as any team's going to have. I mean, it takes me back to Nashville when they had Weber and Suter and all those good young defensemen. That's what this reminds me of. I can't, and one begets the other though. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm reinventing history here for the sake of making an argument, but one can't help but wonder, what if they had Jack Eichel? Didn't have to get rid of Jack Eichel. Now, who knows if all of these things fall into place? They probably don't. But anyway, they've got these two good young defensemen. They've got some talent, like Tage Thompson's a revelation. I think Peyton Krebs is going to score in this league. Again, they have talent, but you just wonder about that top end centerman. And Devin Levi, I know there's a lot on his shoulders as a young goalie. I thought at times he looked overwhelmed last night, but that's going to come. I mean, they're investing in him. They're going to play him. I always go back to kind of the most recent incarnation, but I'm sure there's other ones. But friggin' Ben Bishop. Jerome McGinley scored his 1,000th point against Ben Bishop in goal for St. Louis. Peter Labartie's one of the great calls of all time. And Bishop was overwhelmed that year, but he was thrown to the Wolves and got some time, ends up in Ottawa, ends up in Tampa Bay, and becomes, a pretty incredible goalie. I not to say that Levi has to go to different stops. I'm not saying that. I just, same thing with Dustin Wolf when he finally gets his chance. I do not expect Dustin Wolf to come in and spin around on his head, pitching shutouts all the time. Mika Kiprasov, we have a really kind of interesting relationship. It's almost like Calgary found him and he never played before. He played and he was part of the 3-man system in San Jose. He played. As a matter of fact, I believe Mika Kiprasov was the first Finnish goalie ever to win a game in the playoffs. He did that for San Jose. So it's going to take some time. Buffalo wasn't that far out of the playoffs last year. But I don't get the sense that beating the Buffalo Sabres right now at this time is something that you would put on your mantle or your trophy case. And certainly Columbus won't be. But if you're Calgary, you got to win these games. These are, again, look at what happened at the end of last season, the points that had been given away earlier in the year and how they came back and haunted you. One last one on last night's game, and that is really, it's not last night's game as much as it is the start to this season. And Adam Ruzicka got the game-winning goal, 4 games in, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. It's interesting, and we'll take questions later on. You can drop them in the chat, and Jack will get them to us. But I remember right at the beginning of training camp, Jack had somebody dropped a question there. What are they doing with Ruzicka? Why is he, playing up the lineup and Coronado's playing down the lineup? And again, they know what he is. Here's your opportunity. Go prove it. I like Adam Ruzicka. When he's on as a player, he's on. But man, he was off last year. Now you can blame Darryl for that. You can blame usage for that. You can blame. But at some point, the player's got to take some responsibility. And if you remember, in his draft year as a 4th round pick, the description of Adam Ruzicka was, boy, there's a lot to like about this kid, but he doesn't bring it every night. And I think he's had to fight that perception since then till now. I watched him in the American Hockey League, and his numbers were gaudy, and I thought Matt Phillips did a lot for him. And listen, we just talked to Adam Portzline about, Gaudreau and Laine can't seemingly get it to work. Ruzicka and Phillips worked really well. It's a symbiotic relationship, but Phillips had a large role to play in that. So happy for Adam Ruzicka to the start. I think the Flames needed that start. Like the 4th line last night. He's not on the 4th line, but used to be on the 4th line. So cool. Okay, repeat rinse up against Columbus. Markstrom will likely get the net back. You need to start stringing wins again. Remember, this team had a hard time stringing wins together last year. You remember that? They need to string some wins together. Now, right now, they got points in 2 consecutive games. Now it's got to be points in 3 consecutive games, 2 consecutive wins. That's where they need to be held. A couple of other things. I am very curious to see how this plays out. Announcement today from Northland, which is a long-time old stick maker, and the Wayne Gretzky Foundation, that they have partnered on a project. Northland hockey sticks was, I know everybody always remembers Gretzky and the Titans, but when he started, it was with Northland. Today, they announced that the Wayne Gretzky Foundation and the company that owns Northland are going to put out an inexpensive hockey stick. Essentially, you get 3 sticks for $99, is how I read it. I applaud this. I can't wait to see how this works out. I have a dear friend who's a rep for the major company, and I take nothing away from them. I know people in the business and stuff like that. But I got to be honest with you, kids. Me, who played 5 times this year, 6 times, coaches a little bit, so I need a stick. And when I broke mine, and I no longer have that ability to go down and ask if there's extras, I have to go purchase my own. I know. Crime against America. I guess we're in Canada. But anyway, I walk into a store and I start looking at my height, and I can't get a stick for less than $3.99, and I'm going to play 4 or 5 times. Like, my worry isn't me. My worry is the parent who feels like I'm not putting my kid in hockey because I can't afford it. So a reasonable, cheap option for kids who are playing house league, or for kids who are starting hockey, or for beer league players, I applaud. Absolutely applaud. We need more of it, not less of it. There will always be a market for high end. There just will be. We can't help ourselves. But I am excited to see that somebody's taking the cost of hockey seriously, and not surprising, it's Wayne Gretzky. Want to make mention of Cale Makar. Cale Makar has become the new leader for fewest games to reach 250 career points amongst defensemen. Career leader. He did it in 241 games. I don't get excited about Ovechkin chasing Gretzky, or Marleau, surpassing Gordie Howe. Those ones, to me, different eras and all that. But this I get excited about. This I am impressed about. This blows my mind. Because I really like the kid. Met him a couple of times. Fantastic individual, fantastic human being. From here, by the way. But look at those faces. Look at those guys. One thing they all have in common: Hall of Famers. Dennis Potvin does not get enough respect, does not get anywhere near enough respect for what he did to the game and how good a defenseman he was. Bobby Orr was Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux before. I mean, Gordie Howe was really impressive, but Bobby Orr he reinvented I had the luxury of seeing him right at the tail end of his career as a kid. I still remember Boston and then Chicago. So I can't take anything from I saw in Chicago, because that wasn't the same. But you go back and you watch the videos of Bobby Orr and Cale Makar in this incarnation, with this goaltending, with the rules, all of these things, has done this in 6 fewer games. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Jack, questions? Do we have any?
Yeah, we do.
How come you sound so bad? What's going on there? Am I okay on the other end?
You're okay. Do I sound horrible?
Yeah, I think it is you, pal.
Yeah, it definitely.
Oh my gosh. What are we going to do? You want to try me with a question and see if I can fight through it?
Yes. Would Jonathan Hubert?
You know what, Jack? I can't hear you. So if we can, maybe what we'll do is table some of these questions and we'll drag them over to Monday, because it's really, I can't even understand you on this end. So with that said, my apologies. And poor Jack's had a tough week. He's starting to feel better, and we'll get him back to 100% and back in the studio on Monday. So we'll do this. Let's do our final mile. Today, we salute one of Canada's greatest. One of Canada's greatest. And that's it. I'm not going to put sport, gender, anything next to it, one of Canada's greatest. Christine Sinclair announced on social media, wrote a letter to herself. She's going to play 2 friendlies, Vancouver and Victoria, and this will be at the end of this year. Her career is one that needs to be celebrated, up there with, we were just talking about Wayne Gretzky, with Terry Fox in terms of the impact she has had in a different way. My measuring stick has always been that Terry Fox is our greatest athlete. And I know that we've had, once you say greatest and who and all of that stuff, you're going to end up with a lot of debates. You will not end up with a debate in this category. Christine Sinclair is one of our greatest athletes. Stop. That's it. Don't have to put anything else beside it. She holds one of the most impressive records in all of football. 190 goals scored for her country. That's the most in international play for man or woman. It does not matter. 190 goals. Her 327 appearances for her country, second all-time in FIFA history. 4-time Olympian. She won gold, 2 bronze. I'll never forget the gold, because I had been asked to come in and work with Boomer in the morning on 960. And that game was wrapping up. It went to the penalty kicks, and the really specific language about what you can say and what you can't say about ongoing play-by-play of events that are on other networks. So it was on CBC and we were watching it. And Boomer did an amazing job of living and dying with every shot. And I tried my best to make sure that we were not being viewed as doing play-by-play of that event. But I remember exactly where I was when Canada won gold. I remember Christine Sinclair bursting onto the scene in 2002 in Edmonton at a FIFA event. I think she was 15 years old, and she was just lights out, just absolutely incredible. Since there, I don't know what else to say about her that hasn't been said. I defer to my good friend Sandra Persina, who put out some tweets today that I think are probably most appropriate. But the recognition that she gets, she's earned. I chose not to use the Soccer Canada thank you. I think that one's a little bit bittersweet. I think that towards the end of the career, the hard-ass games that the team had to play with the federation were nothing short of embarrassing. And Christine Sinclair deserved more than that. Not only did she raise the sport for her gender, she raised the sport in our country for all. There's no Alphonso Davies without Christine Sinclair. But Rob, you can't say that. But I can. Because the women's program got international status. The women's program got international profile. It allowed Soccer Canada to do things. It allowed Soccer Canada to get John Herdman. And Christine Sinclair played a role in that. Absolutely, in attracting good coaches. So she's had a large role to play with the growth in our sport. I was just talking to somebody in soccer today. When I was a kid, nobody cared about Canadian soccer. We only cared about our heritage in our home countries, where we came from. If the Italians were doing well, if the Scottish were doing well, if the Croatians were doing well, whatever, the English, now people give a damn about wearing the maple leaf and supporting Soccer Canada. And I just refuse to use their picture because they owe her this game owes her so much, but they owe her an apology for putting her through the crap that she's had to go through with her teammates in the last couple of months. So that's where I sit on that. Face should be on money. Just so in awe of what she's accomplished. I'm very curious to see what her next. She owes nothing to anybody, but I have a sneaking suspicion she's going to play a large role in growing the sport and continuing to grow. She's already done that, to continue to grow the sport of soccer. So that will do it. Thanks to everybody. We have Danny Austin and myself are back tonight immediately following the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets for Afterburner. So make sure you join us. We'll break that game down. We're back on Monday. I believe Ryan Pike is our guest on Monday. He'll rejoining us again. We got a lot to talk about with Mr. Pike. Busy weekend for the Calgary Flames. Columbus tonight. They finish off their road trip in Detroit on Sunday. The Stampeders are in action, taking on BC tonight. Must win, all of those sort of things. Don't forget that the Cavalry are in action tomorrow. 2:00, I believe, is the start time at Atco Field. They need to beat Pacific to go to Hamilton to play the Forge in the final. Again, great regular season, but you need to finish it off with a playoff run. So they're looking to do that. I cannot say enough good things about Jack, our producer, who's worked under really trying conditions this past week and somehow has made us get on the air and do the best that can ever be expected of me. So thanks to Jack. Thanks to you. Thanks to Aaron Portzline. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you tonight on Afterburner.